Hi guys, Mike Wright here, Mike Wright Photography. I'm at home in my office and I just wanted to talk to you for a couple of minutes about what to look for when you go to hire a photographer. Recently, I had a meeting with the bride via Skype, and towards the tail end of the meeting, I said, "Do you guys have any more questions? Is there anything else you need to ask me?" And she was looking for a question. I know there's something I should ask you, but I just can't think of it. I saw your other video on 7 tips to negotiate better as well as to save money on your wedding and whatnot. You need to make a video on things to ask your photographer. And so I thought about it and I said, well, there's got to be a list out there somewhere where you can go on and, 10 things to ask your photographer. And when I looked, all the questions were bad. They were things that had to do with contract and make sure you negotiate this and ask if you have the rights for this and that. All these things that, really don't help you to, choose a better photographer. So I figured I'd talk about a few things that, I really think are important and key differentiators between one photographer and another. The first thing is lighting, lighting, lighting. Lighting is the most important element in all of photography. You can't have a good photo if it's not lit well. It's especially important for wedding photography because at least 50% of the day, maybe 100% of the day is going to be photographed using flash. I mean, if you think about your reception, it's probably going to be indoors at nighttime, in which case you're going to have to use flash. Sometimes the ceremony is held after dark for religious reasons. Sometimes down here in South Florida, daylight savings time, people don't want to have a 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock ceremony where the reception ends at 8 o'clock. They still want to have that reception that goes through midnight. So the ceremony may be after dark at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And the lighting may be sufficient in terms of setting the correct ambiance for your family and friends, but it may not be conducive to good wedding photography. So you need to make sure that your photographer not only is good at lighting, but understands it in a way that that they can be creative with it as well. Um, uh, the best way to really go about it is, when you sit down with your photographer, say, tell me about your lighting. Show me some examples where you used, off-camera flash or multiple flashes or whatnot. Show me some of your best, flash photographs so that way you can have a good idea of what they're capable of so that going forward that they can get the type of photos that you need in any type of condition. Another thing to ask about is what type of flashes do they use. For example, this is a speed light. You've probably seen these before. Maybe you have a family friend, uncle, cousin, Uncle Bob, whatever, that, they're into photography and they've got one of these on their camera every time you see them. This is a studio strobe. It's a lot more powerful than this little speed light. And that's important because down here in South Florida, it's not uncommon for us to shoot, the family formals, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, bridal party, in bright, bright sun. And you need to be able to have that power to match the sun. This little guy, while you can do some nice things with it, it's no match for, the South Florida sun, or if you got a beach wedding, or for that matter, just certain times of day, it's not going to do the job. The other thing too is with the studio strobes, you get the same quality in terms of the quality of the light that you would in any of your favorite magazines in terms of their shooting, in terms of shooting, in terms of shoots, in magazines, Vogue, Sports Illustrated, whatever. A lot of these high-end magazines, they use studio strobes for a reason. It's the best form of light in terms of quality and quantity when natural light just doesn't suffice. As I mentioned earlier, you can be the best natural light photographer in the world, but at a certain point at a wedding, you're going to need to use flash. One of the things that I do from time to time, I have other photographers that I'll meet or just reach out to me, via email and say, Mike, I like your style. If you're ever looking for a second shooter, please keep me in mind, blah, blah, blah. And one of the first things I say is, hey, show me some photos, in a dark church. Show me some of your reception photos. Show me some of your photos where you're using flash, because that really helps me to figure out, who's good and who's just kind of average, in my opinion. Another thing I'll ask, which is very important for you, I'll ask them to show me a full wedding. Sometimes you have people that are, uh, good at family formals, but they're not good at shooting details. Sometimes you get people that are good at formal pose shots, but aren't very good, photojournalists that capture the moment as it happens. Everything looks posed. So if you see not only just one full wedding, but a couple full weddings, it'll help you to really decide if the photographer is the right person for you. The next big thing is personality. Talk to the photographer for a little bit and then just ask them, tell me about your personality. Are you laid back? Are you type A, type B, high strung? This is very important because if you're going to spend 6, 8, 12 hours with a photographer and they're type A running around super hyper, like that's going to drive you insane on your wedding day where you already have enough to think about and you're already going, your emotions are high and you're already to the point to where you don't want anything crazy to happen. To have some photographer that's very intrusive and 2 feet away from you going, all right, faster, we need to come over here. No, that's insane. It'll drive you crazy. So talk to them about personality. Personality and lighting are the two big things that you really need to look at when you're looking at a photographer. Another couple of questions to ask. Is it always guaranteed to be you? Unfortunately, there's some companies in the business that, may have 3, 4, 10 different photographers on staff, maybe 100 photographers. Who knows? And it's a thing where, who's your photographer going to be? Is it going to be the guy that they just hired last week? Is it going to be the guy that was shooting for them for 10 years? Do they tell you now? Is it guaranteed? Is there some type of penalty or benefit to you if it's someone else? These are important questions. I mean, that album that they're showing you, or for that matter, their portfolio that they show you, who shot that? Is this Jim's picture? Is this Bob's picture? Is this Wayne's pictures? Like, whose photos are they? And is that going to be the guy or girl at your wedding doing those same types of photos? I mean, that's something that, that really concerns me when you're talking about a company that may have all these different people on staff. In my opinion, I'm biased, but, I think a company with a photographer that has his name on it, his or her. In my case, it's Michael Wright Photography. I put my name on the company. I'm proud of it. And, it represents me. I try my best every time out because I don't want my reputation or my name to be, dragged through the mud or anything bad to be said about me in any way, shape, or form because it reflects back on me. Versus if you have a photographer that's John and he's shooting for happy sunshine, rainbow, sparkle, whatever photography, I mean, is he really going to put the same amount of effort into it? Because at the end of the day, he gets to go home, and if they say something bad about the company, so be it. But when you have your name on your own company, you take a certain pride in it that makes you go above and beyond what you would do if it were a different company that you just happen to be working with. And that's my opinion on that. Furthermore, a couple other questions. What are the options for prints and albums? Unfortunately, I do a fair number of bridal shows, and it always happens. There's 1 or 2 brides that come up to me at the show and say, hey, I already have my photographer, but I love your albums. How much would it cost for me to take his photographs and have you print out an album? And I'm thinking to myself, you have a photographer, but they don't do albums or enlargements. I mean, in this day and age, it is so easy. I mean, there are so many really good album companies out there that you can reach out to and print an album from. To not offer albums or prints really makes me question, how good of a photographer they are. I mean, are they serious about it or not? Is this a friend, or is this just some sort of weekend person that's just, they have a day job and they're just making a few extra $100 on the weekend and really don't take the craft seriously. So that's another thing. If you're a photographer or if you meet with someone that doesn't offer albums or prints, in my opinion, that's a red flag. Going down my list here. how many photos on the website were shot by them versus a second shooter? Sometimes it's not uncommon for a photographer to use multiple second shooters, or maybe one or two good ones, and you go on their website and the work looks awesome, but then come to find out it really wasn't shot by them, it was shot by somebody else. Maybe that person's not with the company anymore, maybe there was a partnership, a guy and a girl, and they split, and all of a sudden the images on there are from previous weddings, and the one person isn't with the company anymore. There's all kinds of scenarios where you could be seeing images on someone's site that either aren't theirs, or the person that shot them isn't there anymore. Another question to ask, and this is a basic one that's really important, is are they insured? A lot of the high-end venues in our area require $1 million worth of liability insurance before we can step on their property. And as someone that shoots a lot and does this full time, I can tell you, that's just the cost of doing business for us, unfortunately. But that is a good thing, because in my opinion, it helps to weed out the part-timers, the fly-by-night people, the people that, aren't really doing it full time versus the professional that's doing it week in and week out. Which leads me to my next point. You should ask the photographer how many weddings they do per year. This is more important to me than how many they've done in total, because I could tell you, oh yeah, I've shot 500 weddings in my career, blah, 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 or what have you. But if you shot 500 weddings and then you took a year or two off and you've only shot 4 or 5 weddings in the last 6 months, you're going to be rusty. No different than if you're a basketball player or you play golf or something. If you only go on a basketball court 3 or 4 times a year, your jump shot's going to be off. And it's no different with photography. I mean, there's a rhythm to it. There's a flow to it. If I go 1 month without shooting a wedding, when I come back, the rhythm isn't quite there. Now, the job I do is still good, but you just don't have that same pace or flow that you do when you're doing 2 in a weekend or 8 in a month or back to back to back to back. So asking someone how many that they do per year, to me, is a better question than asking how many that they've shot in total. Going from there, another thing to ask is, does this person work alone? Do they have an assistant? Do they have a second shooter? To me, at a minimum, I think most people need to have an assistant, because it just helps with the day. I mean, whether it's carrying lenses or doing the family formals, maybe getting the next grouping together while I'm shooting one, having an assistant really helps my day go so much easier. When I'm shooting and I can tell my assistant, hey, grab me the 85 millimeter next, and I continue to shoot, change lenses, I don't really miss a beat. Also, like I said, family formals, it helps it go so much faster when I got the list and I can just give it to my assistant and she's yelling out, Jane, Paul, Tony, whoever's next, come up here and stand over here, so that when we're done with this group, we can swap it out and go through it really fast so that we can get to the awesome portraits that most people hire me for. Going to the next question. Another important question to ask is, what does the average couple spend after the wedding? A lot of times you have a package which includes a lot of things, but then depending on what the photographer offers, whether it's something like a album credit towards an album, or maybe they include digitals, maybe they don't, maybe they're full res versus partial resolution, what have you. Asking what does the average couple spend after the wedding will give you a good idea of any additional charges that you may incur after the wedding. There was a big case recently in the photography community where there was a photographer that didn't include an album cover, and the couple got upset and it got on the news and whatnot. And this could have been avoided real easily by just asking in advance, hey, what does the average couple spend? 200, 400, 600? What does that entail? Do most people just buy extra album pages? Do most people buy canvas prints? Just asking what are some popular add-ons that people do after the wedding will go a long way to helping you make a decision, because unfortunately there's some companies that may be out there where they've got a low price where you get in the door, oh yeah, it's only whatever $100 or whatever $1,000 to go with this package right here. But then when it's time to get out the door, It may be, oh, well, this, and this wasn't included, so it's an extra $1,000 if you want any of that, or an extra 2,000, and that can be quite jarring if you were thinking that you had everything included in your package ahead of time. Other than that, I mean, just use common sense, kind of get a vibe for a person, kind of see what, their personality is, like I said earlier, and just kind of go from there. Other than that, if you got any questions, just leave it in the comments below. If you thought this was helpful, if there's anything else that you think I should add, just let me know. And once again, I'm Michael Wright, Michael Wright Photography. If you need a photographer for your event, make sure your photographer is right. Thank you and have a great day.